Streamline event and appointment booking with Amelia's sleek, modern, and fully customizable booking forms. Tailor the colors, fonts, and design to match your brand and seamlessly integrate with your WordPress website. Whether it's for events or appointments, Amelia makes booking simple, stylish, and perfectly aligned with your business. Enhance your booking experience today at WPAmelia.com. That's WPAMELIA.com. Amelia. Are you ready to take control of your health? At 4U Health, we believe wellness and lab testing should be accessible, inclusive, and yes, fun. With our tech-powered at-home lab test, you save time and money while feeling your best. Say goodbye to long waits and office visits. Check your health on your own terms with 4U Health. Visit 4uhealth.com today and free yourself from traditional medicine. That's the number 4uhealth.com.
Life can throw a lot your way in the morning. You might be battling drop-off times, while your kids are battling imaginary monsters or their shoelaces. But no matter what life brings, Life cereal puts a smile on everyone's face. With 24 grams of whole grains and unexpected sweetness in every serving, it's sure to please even the pickiest eaters. Help start your mornings with Life cereal.
I really love my life.
Ah, the sizzle of McDonald's sausage. It's enough to make you crave your favorite breakfasts. Enough to head over to McDonald's. Enough to make you really wish this commercial were scratch and sniff.
And if you're a sausage person, now get 2 satisfyingly savory sausage McGriddles, sausage biscuits, or sausage burritos for just $3.33. Or mix and match. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Oh, should we start this show?
Yeah, I'm down. Just buying a car on Carvana first.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, it's super convenient. I already got pre-qualified in 2 minutes. All I had to do is answer a few questions.
Ooh, that's helpful.
And now just customizing my down and monthly payments.
Ooh, that's a very fair deal.
Yep. Boom. Just bought a car. And you get to take me to the Carvana vending machine in a couple days to pick it up.
Ooh. I'm kind of busy.
Visit Carvana.com to finance your next car.
Financing subject to credit approval.
Hi there, it's me, Claire Sanema, host of Final Days on Earth. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening to this podcast that I've been working on for years. My great hope is that as many people as possible would hear Dammion's story, and that someone who knows something about his case will come forward with new information. If you want to help me do that, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to my show, and post about it on social media. These 3 things will really help expose Dammion's story to a larger audience. And his family deserves that. If you have any thoughts or questions about Dammion's case, I'd love to hear from you. Contact me securely by sending an email to tips@finaldaysonearth.com. Now, for this week's show. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me for a special Q&A episode of Final Days on Earth. I'm your host, Claire Sanema. For the past 7 weeks, we've been on a journey to discover what happened to Dammion Hurd, and who, if anyone, is responsible for his death. This is my rookie podcast, and I so appreciate you hanging in there with me as I learn the ropes. And hopefully, the audio levels are getting better. Yes, I do read the reviews, and I appreciate every comment, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because it means I actually have an audience. And that in itself is exciting. You see, for years, Dammion's story just lived in my head and on my computer. And there was no one I could really talk to about it because no one knew enough to have a real conversation. But that's all changed thanks to you, my loyal listeners. I thought I'd give you some numbers. This little podcast has been downloaded over 160,000 times with listeners in all 50 states and 99 countries. That's pretty cool. With an audience that wide, we've gotten some really interesting questions and observations from as close as Colorado and as far away as Australia. Several people have asked what happened to episode 4, and trust me, I feel your pain. For a long time, I couldn't find episode 4 either. It was an issue with Apple Podcasts, and it has been resolved. You should be able to listen to episode 4 on Apple Podcasts now, but if you're not able to, you can always find all the episodes at podcast1.com. Spoiler alert, if this is your first time listening to Final Days on Earth, you're going to want to hit pause and go catch up on episodes 1 through 7 before diving into this Q&A. All right, you've been duly warned, so let's get right down to it. Our first question comes from Krista, who lives in Gunnison, Colorado. Krista asks, are you 100% certain that it was Dammion at City Market gas station? Was there any chance it could have been someone else? Just for context, the last known images of Dammion's life are captured on video surveillance at a gas station in Gunnison, Colorado called City Market. The video was taken at 1:33 a.m. on Sunday, March 30th, 2014. It's about a 2-minute recording, and in it you see a black Saturn SUV reverse into position at the gas pump, and then you see a male exit the car and pump gas. Krista was the first person to ask this question, but a lot of other people have chimed in as well, and are wondering, is that really Dammion in the video? Could it be someone else? For this question, I thought I'd bring in Dammion's dad, Gary Hurd. I think he's most qualified to answer with certainty about Dammion's identity.
I'm confident that was Dammion for sure.
And so what about that video made you believe that was 100% your son?
The way he walked would be one. His size, of course, would be another. It's kind of a grainy video, but, the facial features don't match Dammion's. So, yeah, I would definitely say I'm confident that was Dammion pumping the fuel.
When I talked to Gary for this Q&A, he was on a break from work, and we talked over our cell phones. So the quality of our call is not perfect. I summarize what we say at times to avoid having to use the garbled recording. Several people notice that Dammion backs into the pump. Whenever you watch the full video, you see he does not pull forward like you normally would to pump gas. He actually backs into it. I asked Gary if that struck him as odd. Gary said he wouldn't know if it was normal or not for Dammion to back into a position at the pump. Gary considered the idea that something was blocking Dammion from pulling forward, something out of view of the camera that we couldn't see.
The way he pulled in would have been the most difficult way to do it. So, and he seemed to do it pretty flawlessly. So, I don't have a good answer for that, to be honest.
No, I think that's a great answer, actually, because I noticed, what I noticed from it was, wow, I don't think I could do that stone cold sober, much less right at the end at 1:30 in the morning after a party with my friends. Like, man, that's some pretty sweet driving, dude. Like, I mean, I thought that was expert level reverse maneuver. So that struck me in that way. If you want to see for yourself, you can watch the whole video of Dammion at the gas station on my website, finaldaysonearth.com/blog. The next part of Krista's question is about items found at the scene of Dammion's death at Cabin Creek. Krista asked, did Dammion have a sleeping bag and bandana like the ones at the scene? Yes, he did. The orange sleeping bag, the blue bandana, and the black and red jumper cables were items that belonged to Dammion and that he was known to keep in his car. Here again is Dammion's dad, Gary Hurd.
Before he went off to college, given where he was going and the climate there, I made sure that he had, his emergency kit, which is where the jumper cables came from. And I made sure that he had a sleeping bag in case he ever broke down or anything like that up there. He'd have that. And the bandana, yes, that was his bandana.
Gary said that the bandana was something that Dammion got in high school, and that other wrestlers on the high school team all had those bandanas and kept them on the rearview mirrors of their cars. I had spotted that bandana in many photos taken in Dammion's car. Selfies and in other shots, you would see the bandana hanging somewhere in the car, often from the rearview mirror, but also sometimes it was in this area around the driver's side seatbelt hanging from the top. But in the scene photos, it was in a different location. It was actually found on the passenger seat next to the cell phone that was disassembled. There were 4 items on that passenger seat: the phone, its case, the battery, and the blue bandana. I asked Gary Hurd what he made of the bandana being in that location.
My gut tells me that's what they used to wipe the phone down, maybe even some of the controls on the vehicle with.
In case you didn't catch that, Gary said that his theory was that whoever harmed Dammion used his bandana to wipe the phone down afterwards, and that's why there weren't any fingerprints found on it or anywhere else in the vehicle.
So yeah, my guess is, and probably a really good guess, that that's what they use to wipe the phone and the car down with.
I had the same thought about it being used to wipe down the phone, because it doesn't make any sense to have it next to the phone and the battery. I mean, if you're taking apart a phone, and we know whoever did that, more than likely used the tools that were in the car, because there was that screwdriver set that was mostly still packaged, brand new down on the floorboard of the passenger seat, with some items that had been removed from it and were lying there as well. And then there was also the tool bag in the back seat that had various screwdrivers and things. So it looks like the tools, to disassemble the cell phone were in that car. But why would you need a bandana? You don't need a bandana whenever you're using a screwdriver. It got me thinking too, and it made me, especially when I found out there was one latent print on the face of Dammion's cell phone. Only one. I mean, my cell phone's going to have tons of fingerprints on it. It seems like somebody, once again, covering their tracks. The question is it Dammion covering his own tracks? Or is it someone who wished Dammion harm, covering their tracks? I think those are the two essential questions that we still, are looking for an answer to. Our next question comes from @JenDanity. Dammion was seen at a gas station on closed-circuit television in the middle of the night after a party. Seems strange to be out driving around after a party, particularly when he was thought to be relatively intoxicated at the party that evening. Did he have a known history of going out driving after college parties? Seems more likely he would have been crashing at home or trying to meet up with a date, rather than driving around all alone after a party. When was he noted to be texting the girl to meet up? Great points, Jen. Let's take it one by one. First, Dammion was not known to drive around after parties. Multiple people, including Kyle Pyatt and Devin Zavala, specifically told police that they did not understand why Dammion would have left the house. Kyle said whenever Dammion drinks, he never wants to drive or do anything like that. And Devin said that when Dammion partied hard, he would crash at the wrestler's house and sleep it off. To Jen's second point, there were multiple girls who were interested in meeting up with Dammion after 1 a.m., and Western student Lacey Miller was in the process of going to Dammion's dorm room at 1:30 in the morning when he stopped communicating with her, and it appears that his phone was turned off. It's definitely one of these stranger points in the timeline when Dammion stops communicating with Lacey, fills his car with half a tank of gas, and disappears into the night at 1:36 a.m. Our next question comes from PumpK1251, who writes, As a Gunnison local, I have been reading about Dammion's case since 2014. I know many of the people in the podcast and all the locations, so it makes it even more interesting. I truly feel for Dammion's family, and the lack of a thorough investigation would make Dammion's death even harder to bear. My question is there any way to pressure the college into giving answers for why they lied and made multiple huge mistakes in reporting Dammion present at class and the cafeteria on Monday? Pump K, you are speaking my language. I have tried my darndest to get someone from Western Colorado University to go on the record with me. I've requested numerous interviews over the course of 7 years, but they've never been granted. In 2021, right before I launched this podcast, I contacted the university again to request an interview, and I also specifically asked about any university records that existed from March 31st through April 2nd, 2014, that pertained to the accuracy of information about Dammion Hurd's ID card swipes and class attendance. I got a copy of an email time-stamped at 8:44 a.m. on Wednesday, April 2nd. To put that in context, that's about an hour and 15 minutes before Dammion's body is discovered by police. The email was sent from Gary Pearson, Vice President of Student Life, to University President Greg Salisbury and Executive Vice President Brad Baca. The email reads, Greg and Brad, just a heads up for both of you. Dammion Hurd, a freshman student from Fort Worth, Texas, and a member of the Western Wrestling team, has been reported missing since late Saturday night, which has been confirmed as a last sighting. We are still waiting to get an official confirmation that he attended one of his classes on Monday, March 31st, 2014, and we do have documentation that his ID card was used in the Rare Air Cafe on Monday as well. Outside of those two situations on Monday, he hasn't been seen or heard from by any of his faculty, roommates, friends, or family. We are currently working with Dammion's father and the Gunnison Police Department and are following our protocol for a missing student. You can scroll down the page to Missing Student and Policy Procedure. Please let me know if you have any questions or if you need additional information. Thank you. This language is notable to me because of how quickly the university backpedaled and tried to say that Dammion was not in class or in the cafeteria Monday once his body was located and an eyewitness put him on scene Sunday afternoon. Note the difference between the next email that Gary Pearson sent out to the entire Western community at 3:42 p.m. that same day, April 2nd, 2014. Dear campus community, I am deeply saddened to share with you that Western student Dammion Hurd, a freshman, was found deceased on Bureau of Land Management property this afternoon in Gunnison County. Dammion had not been heard from since early Sunday morning, and the university has been working around the clock with police to locate him. Police would like for you to know that they are not pursuing a suspect in Dammion's death, and they do not believe anyone is at risk. Dammion was a vibrant and beloved member of the campus community, a great student, and an accomplished athlete. Our hearts and thoughts are with his family and friends. Did you catch that? The timeline just shifted. Dammion's ID card usage in the Rare Air Cafe on Monday and his attendance in class is no longer a marker for the university. But as far as I can tell, the only thing that changed was the discovery of Dammion's body. If they truly had an explanation, a glitch in the system, an error in looking up the information, why wouldn't they come out and say it? Their silence on the subject for 7 years speaks volumes to me. You can view both of these emails in their entirety on my website, finaldaysonearth.com/blog. It's me, Claire Sanema, host of Final Days on Earth. When Simply Safe Home Security's founders, Chad and Eleanor Lawrence, designed their first security system in their kitchen, they did it for a very personal reason. Their friends had just had their home broken into. They were struggling to find a security system that was simple to set up and would make them feel safe again. Making people feel safe is what Simply Safe has been doing ever since that moment 15 years ago. A passion to protect people not only drives every engineering detail in its products, but it motivates every interaction with its customers. Simply Safe has highly trained security experts ready whenever you need them, whether that's during a fire, a burglary, a medical emergency, or even just when you're setting up the system. There's always someone there who has your back to keep you safe and make sure you feel safe. To learn more about how Simply Safe can help protect you and your family today, visit simplysafe.com/finaldays. to customize your system and get a free security camera. That's simplysafe.com/finaldays. Have you ever thought about how to take care of your family no matter where they go? An Air Medcare Network membership protects your family and your finances if a medical emergency arises. Air Medcare Network crews provide air medical transport to the nearest and most appropriate trauma center. And as a member, you'll never see a bill for that flight. It's true. Members never pay a thing for transport when flown by an AMCN provider. This is an important membership to have because your health insurance may not cover the full cost of emergency medical air transport. An AMCN membership covers everyone in your household for just pennies a day. And right now, my listeners get up to a $50 Amazon or Visa e-gift card when you join. Be prepared with an Air Medcare Network membership. Visit airmedcarenetwork.com/final and use offer code FINAL. Do you ever get that feeling like...
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, TalkSpace is here for you. Plus, TalkSpace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to TalkSpace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at TalkSpace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at TalkSpace.com.
Hey, it's Claire Sanema, host of Final Days on Earth. Have you ever signed up for something and then totally forgotten about it? I just learned that 85% of people have at least one paid subscription going unused each month. Thanks to Rocket Money, I can see all my subscriptions in one place and cancel the ones I'm not using anymore. And now, I'm saving money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/finaldays today. That's rocketmoney.com/finaldays. rocketmoney.com/finaldays.
Experience the perfect blend of exquisite craftsmanship and life-changing technology with Gevi. Every product is built with precision, featuring specialized parts that ensure durability, efficiency, and safety. We put every machine through 6,000 rigorous tests to guarantee long-lasting performance. With cutting-edge technology and a commitment to energy efficiency, Gevi makes your life easier, greener, and more convenient. Upgrade your everyday with Gevi. Visit us at gevi.com to discover more. That's gevi.com.
That you're not really alone. When Simply Safe Home Security's founders, Chad and Eleanor Lawrence, designed their first home security system in their kitchen, they did it for a very personal reason. Their friends had just had their home broken into. They were struggling to find a security system that was simple to set up and would make them feel safe again. Making people feel safe is what Simply Safe has been doing ever since that moment 15 years ago. A passion to protect people not only drives every engineering detail in its products, but it motivates every interaction with its customers. Simply Safe has highly trained security experts ready whenever you need them, whether that's during a fire, a burglary, a medical emergency, or even just when you're setting up the system. There's always someone there who has your back to keep you safe. To learn more about how Simply Safe can help protect you and your family today, visit simplysafe.com/finaldays and customize your system and get a free security camera. That's simplysafe.com/finaldays. Let's go to our next question. I received a number of inquiries about the toxicology reports in Dammion's case. C_Craven97 and several others have asked about why multiple toxicology reports were submitted in Dammion's case and what were the differences between them. So this is an interesting and contentious element of Dammion's story. I can confirm that yes, there were multiple toxicology reports in Dammion's case. His body was found on April 2nd, and the first autopsy took place on April 3rd in Colorado. The second autopsy took place on April 10th in Texas. Toxicology samples were taken on both April 3rd and April 10th. In Colorado, the pathologist took a sample of Dammion's blood that was sent to ChemTox Laboratory in Boulder, Colorado. This lab tested for 16 different substances and returned 3 positive results, indicating the presence of cannabinoids, THC, and LSD. The second autopsy was conducted at American Forensics in Dallas, Texas. The pathologist there tested blood and vitreous eye fluid for 27 different substances. It all came back negative, except for chemicals used in the embalming process, which makes sense as Dammion had already had his initial autopsy. What doesn't make sense is why Dammion tested positive for LSD and marijuana in the Colorado lab, but negative in the Texas one. Here again is Dammion's dad, Gary Hurt.
I'm definitely suspicious about the toxicology report showing a trace amount of LSD. We also sent out samples to an independent lab, and that test came back negative.
It's a very low level, 0.26 nanograms per milliliter, which is only 1/10 above the threshold for detection. The second autopsy, the one that showed no presence of LSD, was taken 1 week later. That's all I'll say for now, because in a future episode, I discuss the levels with two of the world's leading experts in the psychology and pharmacology of LSD, so you haven't heard the last on this subject. As I've mentioned before, this podcast isn't my full-time gig. I'm also a producer for the crime show 48 Hours on CBS. That means my Rolodex of detectives, investigators, and attorneys is pretty thick. Let's just say I know who to call no matter what side of a criminal investigation you end up on. One of those people I'm glad to have on speed dial is a former homicide detective for Lubbock Police Department, Zach Johnson. A skilled investigator, Detective Johnson also happens to be a fan of true crime podcasts. And the questions he was asking me about Dammion's case were so good that I asked him if he'd come on the show as a special consulting detective for Final Days on Earth. After just a little bit of red tape, Lubbock PD signed off on it. Thanks so much for coming on, Zach.
Oh, sure, Claire. My pleasure.
Detective Johnson is a 15-year law enforcement veteran. So let's talk about, how you and I know each other. I met you when I was working, with 48 Hours, and you were a homicide detective on a really complicated murder-for-hire case out of Lubbock.
Yes.
That went to trial in 2015. Why don't you tell us who the victim was and who went on trial?
The victim was a very well-known and well-respected doctor here in Lubbock, Dr. Saunier, and the suspect who hired a gunman to kill him is named Mike Dixon. He's a former plastic surgeon out of Amarillo, Texas.
Yes, and if we talked about that case, we would have a whole nother podcast on our hands, wouldn't we, Zach?
Yes, we would. It would be gigantic.
We'll leave it there, and any listeners who are interested can look up that case. They have all the specifics now, and it's something else. But that's how you and I met, and we stayed in touch since the podcast came out, and we started discussing Dammion's case each week, and I really liked the questions that you were asking me, and I just want to make sure everyone knows you're not affiliated with this case or with the Gunnison Police Department, and you're just doing this as an independent consulting detective for Final Days on Earth.
Yes, correct.
Great. So you had some interesting observations and questions that had popped into your head after listening to, I believe it was the 4th episode, The Body.
Yes.
Yes. Body of Evidence. So I just wanted to see if you would take me through your questions and we could discuss them.
The first question that came to my mind was I remembered that he was last seen wearing diamond earrings in particular and a jacket. And when they found him, it was not clear if those items were there. So that was my first question was, okay, so if he has diamond earrings, those are relatively expensive and they possibly could lend themselves to a motive. So where did those end up? Do we know, were they ever accounted for?
Excellent question. And the fact is, we do not know where those earrings are. They've never been accounted for. They've never been found. They were not on his body whenever it was cut down from the tree at Cabin Creek. They were not in the car. It was thoroughly checked, and no one has ever come forward with them. The police did not execute any search warrants on the house or on any of the wrestlers' vehicles or any of Dammion's friends' vehicles, so we don't know where those earrings could have ended up, but they've never been found, and that is something that I have always wondered about as well. And the blue jacket that he was seen wearing, that he had Snapchatted with the night of the party, people saw him in that coat. His roommate saw him leave the dorm wearing that coat. It's also never been found. And he was found in different clothing. He was found in a sweatshirt that belonged to Andrew Morris. That was not Dammion's. That's what he was. So I have had those same questions and have been so curious. The only clarity I ever got on the earrings, just as far as what they really were, there was actually a receipt in his car. One of the items that the police cataloged whenever they went through everything in his car was a receipt for those earrings, and they were cubic zirconia, but they looked so real. I mean, you know, and they were very flashy, and he had just gotten them a couple weeks earlier. So they were a new purchase, still had the receipt in his car, and had just recently started wearing them. Like his new signature look, right? And every photo that's taken after the purchase of those earrings, he's wearing them. Very recognizable. So I'm curious to this day, you know, what happened to them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that would be very interesting to know, for sure.
Let's go to your next question.
Okay. Well, I can remember there was the subject of the battery in the cell phone, and that the battery had been taken out. It made sense to me, if you remove a battery from a cell phone, you don't want anybody to know where that cell phone is. And so you take the battery out, which kills the power, which kills the ability to track that phone, right?
Yes.
So that would make sense to me if somebody didn't want anybody to find that phone, being that the phone is going to be on that person. The other question that comes to mind is the SIM card in the phone. Traditionally, if you remove a SIM card, you don't want people to know what's on the phone. So you take the battery out so you don't know where the phone has been and where it is, and you take that SIM card out so people don't know what's been on the phone. My biggest question was, I know the battery was missing. Was it ever recovered? If it was it in the immediate area? Was it in the car? Or is it a possibility that it was tossed out somewhere else? And was the SIM card in the phone when they recovered the phone?
Great questions. So the battery was found lying right next to the phone on the seat of the car, the passenger seat of the car. So let me just paint the picture for you. The phone has been disassembled. There's a case that was on it. The case is off. It's also on the passenger seat. The phone itself is on the passenger seat. The battery is removed, and it's lying. All three items are lying, you know, next to each other. Just sort of like they've been dropped, you know, not specially arranged or anything, but just like they took it apart, and that's just the position they fell in. And then there's also this blue bandana, and it's lying on the seat, or in and around those items. It's kind of wrapped up around those items. They're touching. Okay. And then at the bottom of the floorboard of the passenger seat, there is a screwdriver set that is mostly still packaged. You know, it's obviously somewhat new. There's some items removed from it. It's been opened, but it's recently been purchased, and the packaging is still there, and it's in the floorboard of the passenger side of the car. I found all of that so curious and such a scene, right? Because someone, it would appear that someone purposefully went out and purchased these tools to open this cell phone. You know, Dammion disappeared at 1:30 in the morning. This is a very small town. I do not think there are stores that are open at 1:30 in the morning that sell these items. Possibly, right? Could be. But there's no other activity on his debit card. There's no cash found in his wallet, so you could say possibly he used cash to purchase, you know, a screwdriver set. But it's never been accounted for. It was, my understanding, it was not fingerprinted. It was not, you know, DNA swabbed. It's not known where that screwdriver set came from and who used it. Dammion's friends and his family, you know, they said that he was not like a techie guy. Like, I mean, if my husband has disassembled, you know, all the computers, all the cell phones, all the electronics in our house, messed with, you know, motherboards. Like, if there was a screwdriver set in his car, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, he does that kind of stuff, right? He builds computers. Dammion did not do that. And so his friends and his family, you know, the idea that his cell phone was like, I don't want to say professionally disassembled, but it was deliberately disassembled with the proper tools was strange to them. You know, if Dammion was going to do something to his phone, it'd be like throw it on the ground. You know, it seemed out of character for him. Now, granted, a lot of this behavior seems out of character for him, so, you know, take all that with a grain of salt. But I just thought it was interesting that he was not a tech-savvy guy who disassembled electronics normally, right?
Right.
So that was interesting. The SIM card was still inside the phone. What appears to have happened is that at some point someone went in and deleted communications that occurred the night of the party. The very text message that Dammion sent Anthony Rios, the cross-country runner, to invite him to the house was not on Dammion's phone. The thread did not exist. Anthony was a contact in his phone, but they had no message history. And whenever Anthony came to the police department and brought his phone, he showed them the text message on his phone. The thread was there. It was from Dammion Hurd's cell phone. It was not in a separate app. It was a text message. And Anthony still had it on his phone, but Dammion didn't have it on his. And there's no record of it. So that's always been very curious. There's other messages. For example, one that sticks out in my mind, Gary Hurd messaged his son, on Facebook. Whenever his phone was dead, he couldn't get through. If the phone's turned off, you don't see a missed call, right? Because the phone's turned off. So we couldn't see that, but he was so desperate that he went ahead and sent him a Facebook message. And the Facebook message that he sent just, said, "Hey, I've been trying to get a hold of you. Let me know that you're okay." And he sent that on Monday, okay? Because that's that Facebook message. Whenever it's gone. So whenever Gary got into Dammion's Facebook account and went into his Messenger app, there's not a message from his dad, and that would have been the first and only message he ever sent him.
That's important as well, the timeline.
Absolutely.
Very
and
important. Yeah.
Between you and me, and everybody listening, one of the things I found most surprising in this investigation is that the police did not do a timeline. There is no timeline. If they did a timeline, it is not in their 187-page police report.
Wow.
And I feel like that would be part of the report. They did not put a timeline in there, and, as you know, they would not grant me an interview, so was not able to ask them if they did a timeline, that was written. But I asked for all reports, documentations, any written audio, video recordings that existed, in the course of this investigation. I was never given a timeline. And so I created one, that was really the main thing that I did in this podcast is central to everything, was creating this timeline and then deciding, how to break it up into episodes and talk about things piece by piece. But without the timeline, I have no investigation. I have no story.
Right.
It makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly. And between the timeline and a really solid victimology of him, it's really going to be very confusing and very complex. And so I think those are the two most important things that you can do, is a victimology and a timeline to kind of set everything up front and try to clear it up.
I agree. And for people who don't know, can you explain what a victimology is?
Sure. So victimology is a study of the person, the victim, and what about their activities or their life led to them being a victim. In other words, you've got this particular case. There is a ruling of suicide in the case. So the question would be, okay, we have a suicide here. What about the victim or his life led him to committing suicide? And we would investigate that to try to determine what happened in this man's life to lead him down the path to committing suicide. If there was not a suicide finding, and if there was a suspicious death finding, then the question, of course, would be, what about his life, especially in the final days of his life and the hours, what about that led him to becoming a victim of foul play? And so it's the timeline plays an important, very important role in that, because that is going to help set up the events that lead to the death, be it suicide or a suspicious death. And I think that the biggest hurdle in the investigation, especially now we're sitting in 2021, I think the biggest hurdle in that investigation is the fact that you have two medical examiners, one being independent, ruling that it's a suicide. I say that only because it's very, very challenging to get past a medical examiner's ruling as an investigator, and also if you go down the road further as a court.
Yeah.
And so when I'm presented with medical examiner's findings of, well, sir, this is a suicide, then my death investigation pretty much hits a road, it stops.
Yeah.
Because there is no suspicious death anymore. It's ruled a suicide. And on top of that, you have what appears to be self-strangulation by hanging with the battery cables.
Yeah.
In a place that is way out where nobody can find you, with a cell phone that has no battery, to where the whole thing says, I don't want to be found, I want to be left alone, and I want to do this, and no one is going to convince me otherwise. Now, that's all well and good if, and here's the big if the other questions never came up, such as the vehicle that was seen over there with his vehicle,
yes,
the pickup truck with the camper shell. If there was not these emails from professors talking about a timeline here,
yeah,
that said we saw him in class on this particular day, and then they have the code not only typed into class, but it's typed in at the cafeteria. So the big, and that raises the question, okay, well, if that is legit, then, you know, who did that? Because you'd have to know that personal number from what I gathered about what everyone said.
Or have his card.
Or have his card, which we know his card was on his person when the body was found.
Right.
Right. And the card was broken. So the question becomes, okay, well, you said that the university says we got email confirmation that he was there. Okay, well, who are the professors? Let me bring them in, get them on the record, so that I know for sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the young man was in class on this day at this time. And I know that I can back that up because his professor visually saw him in that class. And then I can further back that up by...
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
His key punch into the class. And then I know that they got that other kid on the record about seeing him at lunch. And then, you know, somehow getting that key punch on the record as well. But then you have all of that. But then the school comes back and says, well, maybe not. You know, I mean, and that's extremely frustrating because now they've changed their story. And is it truly a mistake? Was it truly did they truly misspeak? And if so, why? Why would they say something like that? Because that's a pretty heavy statement. Well, yeah, we know he was there because we got email confirmation. Okay. Well, why are you so concerned about backing that up with an email? You know, so those are big questions that without those questions, I think that it would be a smooth suicide investigation. But you've got these other questions that have popped up.
At this point, Detective Johnson brought up the statement from hiker Linda Nienhauser, who called Gunnison police the day Dammion's body was found to report her sighting of Dammion and 2 vehicles at Cabin Creek.
And why do we have a witness that comes forward and provides all this information and then recants? What's the motive for that? Because, I don't know. She said she was confused. But, she gave a pretty lengthy description from what I remember. A very vivid description. So vivid that they were able to connect that vehicle possibly to the wrestler who just so happened to have a physical fight with him the night that he disappeared.
Yes.
Right? And so that plays into your victimology as well. What about his actions put him into a place that led to his death? Well, he had a fight with another guy. There's some question as to whether that guy strangled him at the party or not. It wasn't so severe that he couldn't, leave, debilitating that he couldn't leave. But, that goes to show a motive of sorts. And then, and by the way, we have a witness that came forward, independent witness that came forward that said this vehicle was there. By the way, matches the general description of this dude's vehicle, or the parent's vehicle, rather, that he has access to, right? So where's that vehicle? We need to lay hands on that vehicle. We need to at the very least, take pictures of it, see if it truly matches the description from the witness.
Yeah, they could have taken a picture of that car. It was still parked out in front of the wrestler's house and in that alley, and they could have shown that picture to Linda and said, is this the car you saw? They did not do that. Right. So it's complex.
Detective Johnson's next question was about the condition of Dammion's body when the police discovered it.
About how long did they feel that his body had been outside there? Had it been affected by any of the elements outside? Did they have a timeline to see how long, or they believed how long the body had actually been there? And that type of thing.
Yes. So excellent questions. The medical examiner's report does not list an estimated date of death. They say the body was found on April 2nd, and that's listed as his official date of death. And they make a note in their report that a witness saw the body on Sunday, March 30th, but they do not attempt to determine how long his body had been out there through, forensic means. They do not, examine the contents of his stomach. I have seen that in many other homicide cases where the time of death is a question. I've seen where they go in, they look what's in the stomach, they can tell how long it's been digested and how long the person, presumably within a range of time, when they were last alive. They didn't do that in this case. And they didn't, take a body temperature. Now, granted, he was outside and it's Colorado, but I've seen, research and literature that talks about accounting for the outside temperature and amount of time, and still a way to get a range of when this body stopped breathing, when the blood stopped pumping. And none of those things were done. And unfortunately, the contents of the stomach are gone now. The body temperature is gone now. We won't know those things. And so, there's the autopsy photos. You can see lividity and you can see blanching. So, we know that he had been, and the body was, rigor mortis had set in. It was stiff. He had been there for a while, but we don't have any type of real definitive time or date of death. Really, just not even a date of death. We really don't know if it was, we know after 1:30 a.m. he leaves that gas station, and that's the last time we really know that he's alive, is 1:36 a.m. on Sunday, March 30th, 2014. And then his body is seen by Linda Nienhauser. She estimates sometime, she arrives around 10 a.m. and she leaves, she thinks, around 1:30 or 2 p.m. on Sunday, March 30th. So we have this, 10 to 12 hour range of time where we don't know where Dammion Hurd is, and we don't know if he's dead or alive between 1:30 a.m. and 10 a.m., to 1:30 p.m. when Linda has her hike.
You just never know. And see, the biggest challenge, especially now that we're 6-7 years on in this thing, the biggest challenge, let's say there comes new evidence and, oh my gosh, we need to reopen this thing because here's some new information that blows this case wide open, right?
Right.
Well, the biggest challenge is going to be getting past those ME rulings, because not only do you have one, but you got an independent one hired by the family.
Yeah.
That said it's suicide. So a court is going to be very hard pressed to grant search warrants on a case that was ruled a suicide, because their first question is going to be, well, why do you want to search this man's phone history?
Yeah. Because
the question to me would be, okay, let's say you have a person of interest in the case. Well, how can we put him at the scene of the crime? Well, you track his cell tower records. Right. But you've got to go through a court because you got to get a warrant for that.
So can you still get, I thought you couldn't get cell phone records now that it's been 7 years, because they didn't do it at the time. They didn't subpoena the records. They didn't do the cell phone towers. Can you still get those 7 years later, the tower information?
It may be possible, depending on who had the towers at that time and if they still have the towers.
Wow.
Because a lot of cell phone companies share those towers.
That's so interesting, because I did not think, I honestly thought that had all been long gone, that those were, that I thought like 6 months or something, and those towers would be, their data would be deleted, just for more space or something. Like if the cops do come calling, you just, it's not pertinent to keep.
Well, it's always worth a shot. It's always worth a simple question. Hey, if I submit a warrant, would I be able to get tower information from 2014?
Oh my gosh.
And they're going to tell you either yes, or they're going to tell you, no, man, that's gone.
Yeah.
It's been too long. It's gone.
What I wouldn't give to know if that data is available.
Right. Because then you can kind of put some puzzle pieces together. If you can, depending on what you find out, of course, is going to shoot it off in any number of directions.
Yeah.
But it sure does give you more questions to ask. But yeah, it's very complex, and there are so many wild cards. There are so many just weird things that pop up that seem to contradict each other.
I totally agree. What'd you think of the oxygen deprivation mask?
See, and that was my other question, or that was a question that came into my mind. So, strangulation in a homicide, one of the almost universal findings is a hyoid bone fracture.
Yes.
Right? Because of the force that's exerted when you strangle somebody with your hands or when you strangle them with the ligature. And that fracture severs the windpipe, the trachea, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we have an asphyxiation that didn't crack the hyoid bone, that didn't fracture it, but that was enough to kill somebody, right? And we're guessing that it is because of these battery cables. So the question is, okay, so is it a traumatic, if it's not traumatic asphyxiation, how far where was he at? Like what distance or level was he at? How high off the ground was he when he jumped?
He didn't jump. Yeah. In this case,
did he bend forward?
Yeah, that's what he did. His feet were on, his toes were touching the ground. He's leaning against a rock. You know, if we're going with the theory of suicide and he did it himself, right. It's a slow, controlled process. The sleeping bag is laid out over the rock that his body's leaning against. His toes, both toes, are making contact with the ground, and it would appear that he, slowly deprived himself of oxygen until he died.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and because the other thing that's going to give you that finding is probably the oxygen deprivation mask.
All right, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. I hope you enjoyed this Q&A episode as much as I did. And tune in next week for the next installment on the life and death of Dammion Hurd. Thanks so much for listening. Final Days on Earth is recorded in Dallas, Texas for Cold Case Productions in partnership with Podcast One and Live by Live. Each episode is written, reported, and produced by me, Claire Sandoval. Original theme music composed and performed by Riley Simmons. Songs licensed from PremiumBeat.com are Bending Truth and A Thin Line. Editorial consultant is Lucy Scott of LucyMedia.com. Additional production help from Amber Robinson, Janice Sue, and Elise Weber. Executive producers are Sharon Richards and me, Claire Sandoval. Special thanks to Gary Hurd and Zach Johnson from the Lubbock Police Department for talking to me in this episode.